Hello, it's time for another episode of Stand Up, and I have an excellent guest joining me for the first time, a great journalist reporter who reports on finance, economics, and much more business. Linette Lopez joins me today. We talked about Tesla, we talked about China, and we talked about Boeing. She's real smart and a great get. I think you're going to love my conversation with Linette Lopez that starts at 26 minutes into today's show. But I've got your headlines and some great audio clips from a House Judiciary hearing yesterday that featured some amazing speeches from Congressman Jamie Raskin, Adam Schiff, and a real scorcher from Congresswoman Cori Bush that I want to share with you. But first, I've got your headlines, but just before that, I'm so excited for Las Vegas next week. Yeah, Pod Jam. I cannot wait to see you there, and I'm sorry I haven't put out an agenda options for events yet, but I promise I will be. We'll talk about it this week at the Hangout for those of you that are joining us at our Zoom Hangout this Thursday night. And if you have any ideas for activities, etc., standupwithpete@gmail.com. Also, just want to give a quick shout out to my friend Jim Babowski, who hosted a very successful fundraiser at his home a couple of weeks ago, or on the 7th of March. I didn't do nearly a good enough job promoting it, but I did talk to Lala Wu from Sister District. That's the organization Jim was raising money for, and he emails us and says, "Hello, concerned citizens of Earth One. The Sister District event last night was a success. We had about 60 people in attendance, another 25 by Zoom, and numerous donations by non-attendees. Our featured speaker, Larry Gersten, provided great content about the importance of this year's election, why we can be optimistic. All told, the event raised over $7,000, which is a strong result for this early in the election season. Congratulations to Jim. You are a great friend and a great role model. I hope other listeners and folks will think about hosting fundraisers like that at their house. You make a lot of new friends. You have a lot of fun. Jim actually put together a short slideshow for the event that played in the background, highlighting some of Sister District's successes and Biden's record, and you can check it out if you want to see it and use it as a template. Congratulations to Jim Babowski. So many amazing people out there listening, doing such great things, and I always love to talk about them and focus on the good stuff, the positive stuff, the inspiring things, and Jim Babowski is one of those guys. So thank you very much, sir, for being such an important part of our community and my life, and for doing such an awesome thing and raising money for this great organization, Sister District. All right, now let's get to those headlines. And remember, I can't do any of this work without your support. Thank you to new subscribers, old subscribers, those who've upgraded their subscription and paid more than the $5. Go to patreon.com/PeteDominic right now. If you haven't already, join our community and get the daily email, which includes a photo of vitamin N. And let me put the call out for more of those. Some of you have been sustaining me without me asking. Well, I got to put out the ask, not only for people to pay to support the program, obviously, in my work, but I need your vitamin N. Get out there. Spring is springing, and it's time to take your camera out and take some photos. If you've never sent me a nature photo, the rules are they can't have any man-made objects in them unless it's just such an amazing sunset that I might include it. But flowers and sunsets and rivers and streams and beaches and mountains, you guys have sent it all, so please keep it coming. Subject of the email, vitamin N. Let's get those spring vitamin N pictures out from all over the country, from all over our amazing stand-up community. Just email them to me at standupwithpete@gmail.com. And now let's get to your headlines. The most important news I think I saw yesterday is that RFK Jr. is reportedly considering New York Jets quarterback and one of the most famous anti-vaxxers in the country, Aaron Rodgers, to be his VP, his running mate, which makes total and perfect sense for the world that we're living in. That is definitely not the most important headline. I just thought it'd be a funny and ridiculous headline to start with. I suppose the top news is that last night's primaries secured the nomination for President Biden and the disgraced former president Donald Trump in terms of the delegate count. That's right, Biden and Trump set for the election rematch after securing their party nominations. That is the headline at the BBC, Donald Trump and Joe Biden clinched their party's nominations, the New York Times, and that is basically what we're going to be dealing with for the next 8 months. Yay! In other more important news, the U.S. cobbled together $300 million more for Ukraine. That's right, the Biden administration announced yesterday it was sending more weapons to Ukraine, the first American aid package since the previous funding ran out in December. The delivery will include artillery rounds, armor systems, and air defense interceptors, which are seen as critical for Ukraine's defenses against Russian bombardment. Funding for this package came from money Army accountants saved from contracts that came in under bid. It's a stopgap measure at best, American officials said. The new weapons will keep advancing Russian troops at bay for only a few weeks, one official estimated. For months, President Biden has been calling on Congress to pass legislation authorizing $60.1 billion for Ukraine. He's accused Republican lawmakers who have blockaded the aid of playing into the hands of Vladimir Putin, and he is absolutely right. But that is big news yesterday. It is a drop in the bucket for this invasion, this war, to prevent more Russian aggression, but it's not nothing. The big story that drove the day yesterday was the special counsel who investigated President Biden and his classified documents case. Robert Hur was on Capitol Hill being questioned by both sides, grilled by both sides at the House Judiciary hearing, and I've got some great audio for you from that if you haven't heard it. Hur was there to answer questions about his February report, which concluded that the evidence was insufficient to charge Biden with a crime, but lawmakers spent much of the time trying to obviously scored political points. Some made speeches. Some asked questions. Republicans accused her of protecting Biden as part of what they portrayed as a politicized double standard by the Justice Department, which has charged Donald Trump with willfully retaining sensitive national security documents. And, of course, Democrats attacked her for disparaging remarks in the report about Biden's mental acuity. Congress released a transcript of the special counsel's interviews with Biden, which showed that the president fumbled at times, but he largely appeared clear-headed, which is not exactly what Hur's takeaways were, which he shouldn't have put in the report to begin with, and everybody said we're political. I'll let the audio explain more coming up, and it's real good. Uncertainty has gripped the country of Haiti. Kenya announced today it's halting its plan to send 1,000 police officers to help quell the gang-fueled lawlessness in Haiti until a new government is formed. The deployment deal was reached with Haiti's prime minister, who agreed last night to step down once a new transitional government is formed. Prime Minister named Ariel Henry has been stranded for days in Puerto Rico following a violent gang takeover of much of Port-au-Prince, the Haitian capital, making it impossible for him to return. The gangs who have attacked police stations, prisons, and other state institutions threatened civil war if he did not resign. Crazy what's happening in Haiti right now. I probably should get a guest on to help explain and understand it. Really important story and scary as hell what's happening in that poor country. And not quite the inflation news that we were looking for, but here it is. U.S. inflation was slightly stronger than expected last month, but did little to change expectations that the Federal Reserve will begin cutting rates later this year. Consumer prices rose 3.2% in February from a year earlier, the Labor Department said Tuesday, up slightly from economists' expectations of 3.1%. And let's classify this under dreadful but not surprising, according to Steve Bannon at Maddow blog. School hate crimes targeting LGBTQ plus students have sharply risen in recent years, climbing fastest in states that have passed laws restricting LGBTQ student rights and education. A Washington Post analysis of FBI data found that in states with restrictive laws, the number of hate crimes on K-12 campuses has more than quadrupled since the onset of a divisive culture war that is often centered on the rights of LGBTQ plus youth. In a slightly related story, the Florida Department of Education now must clarify a controversial 2022 parental rights law branded as Don't Say Gay by its critics under settlement reached Monday that upholds a key Governor DeSantis administration policy. The law, which has been expanded, prohibits teachers from leading classroom lessons on gender identity or sexual orientation for students in kindergarten through third grade. But under the agreement, the state must clarify the law's scope to schools across the state, ensuring that, among other things, it does not prohibit references to LGBTQ plus persons, couples, families, or issues in literature or classroom discussions. All right, three more quick headlines. In Uvalde, Texas, the police chief there is resigning He was out of town when 21 people died in a school shooting there in 2022. A needle exchange effort met its demise in Nebraska's legislature yesterday, reflecting the rising skepticism about harm reduction approaches to illicit drug use. And Airbnb announced yesterday that it will ban the use of all indoor security cameras in its listings worldwide. Damn! I really loved going on and watching people through the use of these indoor security cameras at the Airbnb. I didn't ever do that. Was that available? Is that a thing? Somebody must have made a channel for that. But yeah, I think I agree with that. If you're renting someone's home or apartment for a couple days or longer, you shouldn't expect to be filmed while you're doing it. So, good policy. Well done, Airbnb. And those are your headlines. Now let's get to the audio that I've gathered for you today. I'm going to do something a little bit different for the audio section today because I paid attention to these hearings yesterday that I mentioned at the top, the testimony from the Biden special counsel Robert Hur, who investigated President Biden's possession of classified documents. And I thought that they were so good, some of the comments, that I want to include them in their entirety. Congressmen get about 5 minutes at hearings like this, and I'm going to give you the long clips. I'm going to give you the long versions that are 3 to 5 minutes long, starting with Jamie Raskin, longtime listener and great contributor of Vitamin N Pictures. Susan Cardero sent this one to me and said, please include this in the audio section. This is Jamie Raskin, and he is so good in this clip, and I think these were worth listening to in their entirety. So here is constitutional scholar, powerful, influential, and brilliant Congressman Jamie Raskin questioning Robert Hur first yesterday. Actually, I don't know if he went first in the order. I'm just playing it first. Does that matter to you? I'm so glad I cleared that up.
Mr. Hur, your report starts with the line, "We conclude that no criminal charges are warranted in this matter." Have you had any reason to change your opinion about that?
No, ranking member.
You highlight the independence and support you got from the Attorney General and DOJ. Have you changed your mind about that?
I have not.
The report describes President Biden's cooperation in your requests. He allowed his homes to be searched. He answered questions for hours in the midst of a global crisis. Have you had any reason to change your mind about that?
No, ranking member.
All right. You also repeatedly contrast Biden's cooperation with the conduct of Donald Trump. You say, quote, "Most notably, after being given multiple chances to return classified documents and avoid prosecution, Mr. Trump allegedly did the opposite. According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for many months, but he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie about it." Have you any reason to change your judgment about the differences between President Biden's cooperation and the former president's non-cooperation?
No, I continue to stand by those words in my report.
With such a striking contrast, our colleagues have switched over from being impeachment investigators for constitutional high crimes and misdemeanors, which is how this whole thing started, to being amateur memory specialists, giving us their drive-by diagnoses of the President of the United States, whose soaring oratory, powerful historical analysis, and devastating extemporaneous repartee with even the most skilled ninja hecklers of the Freedom Caucus were on full display at the State of the Union address last week for the whole country to see. The desperate quest to invent an issue is a distraction from the 91 federal and state federal charges that Donald Trump faces now, his staggering civil court losses in New York now totaling more than $500 million, and his full-blown embrace and romance with authoritarian dictators and communist tyrants all over the world, from Viktor Orban in Hungary to Vladimir Putin in Russia, the former head of the KGB, to the communist dictator of North Korea. It's not... This, my friends, this is a memory test. But it's not a memory test for President Biden. It's a memory test for all of America. Do we remember fascism? Do we remember Nazism? Do we remember communism and totalitarianism? Have we completely forgotten the sacrifices of our parents and grandparents in prior generations? While we play pin the tail on the donkey in this wild goose chase, all of these silly games, Donald Trump entertains authoritarian hustler Viktor Orban at Mar-a-Lago for the weekend, and Orban comes out to declare that if we indeed sleepwalk into another Trump presidency, Trump will, quote, not give a single penny to Ukraine. That's what all of this is about. It's about trying to pull the wool over the eyes of America, because the tyrants and dictators of the world are on the march today. So who wins with this ludicrous, embarrassing spectacle? Orban wins, Putin wins, Xi wins, the tyrants of the world win. They have one more reason to celebrate Donald Trump and his cult followers, who've completely lost their way.
Whoo-wee. Jamie Raskin is so good at talking and writing. Not sure how much help he gets on those speeches and comments and questions, but that I thought was really, really good. Now let's listen to Congressman Adam Schiff, former prosecutor himself. Now he is the Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate in California. And here was his back and forth, more of a back and forth with Robert Hur yesterday. Somehow I cut off the top, but he starts with, you knew that your report would be public, right?
It would be public, right?
I understood, based on comments that the Attorney General had made, that he had committed to make as much of my report public as consistent with legal policy and legal requirements.
And you could have chosen just to comment on the President's particular recall vis-a-vis a document or a set of documents, but you decided to go further and make a generalized statement about his memory, didn't you?
Congressman, I could have written my report theoretically in a way that omitted references to the President's memory, but that would have been an incomplete and improper report, and that it did not reflect my analysis.
You could have written your report with comments about his specific recollection as to documents or a set of documents, but you chose a general pejorative reference to the President. You understood when you made that decision, didn't you, Mr. Hur, that you would ignite a political firestorm with that language, didn't you?
Congressman, politics played no part whatsoever in my investigative steps.
But you understood nevertheless, didn't you, Mr. Hur? You cannot tell me you're so naive as to think your words would not have created a political firestorm. You understood that, didn't you, when you wrote those words, when you decided to include those words, when you decided to go beyond specific references to documents? You understood how they would be manipulated by my colleagues here on the GOP side of the aisle and by President Trump. You understood that, did you not?
Congressman, what I understood is the regulations that govern my conduct as special counsel.
And those regulations
required me to write a confidential report for the Attorney General,
which you knew would not be confidential.
My decision, and that is what I did, Congressman. I followed the rules.
You knew it would not be confidential.
I followed them.
You knew it would not be confidential, didn't you?
Sir, the regulations required me to write a confidential report explaining my decision to the Attorney General,
which you knew would be released.
It was up to the Attorney General to determine
you understood it would be released. Did you not?
Would be released consistent with DOJ policy.
You understood it would be released. You understood it would be released.
I understood from the Attorney General's public comments that he would make as much of my report public as he could, consistent with legal requirements and DOJ policy.
And you also understand DOJ policy that you are to take care not to prejudice the interests of the subject of an investigation, right?
That is generally one of the interests that DOJ policy requires that prosecutors respect.
And it was your obligation to follow that policy in this report, was it not?
It was also my obligation to write a confidential report for the Attorney General explaining completely my decision.
What you did write was deeply prejudicial to the interests of the President. You say it wasn't political, and yet you must have understood. You must have understood the impact of your words. You must have understood the impact of your decision to go beyond the specifics of a particular document, to go to the very general, to your own personal, prejudicial, subjective opinion of the President, one you knew would be amplified by his political opponent, one you knew that would influence a political campaign. You had to understand that. And you did it anyway. And you did it anyway. And let me just go to some of the differences here between the President's conduct and Mr. Trump's. In the superseding indictment, on page 3, it says that Mr. Trump suggested that his attorney falsely represent to the FBI and grand jury that he did not have documents called for by the grand jury subpoena. You didn't find anything like that with respect to Mr. Biden, did you?
Congressman, I do not have the Trump indictment in front of me, but I need to address something that you said in your prior question. What you are suggesting is that I needed to provide a different version of my report that would be fit for public release. That is nowhere in the rules. I was to prepare a confidential report that was comprehensive and thorough of an explanation.
What is in the rules, Mr. Hur, what is in the rules is you don't gratuitously do things to prejudice the subject of an investigation when you're declining to prosecute. You don't gratuitously add language that you know will be useful in a political campaign. You were not born yesterday. You understood exactly what you were doing. It was a choice. You certainly didn't have to include that language. You could have said, vis-a-vis the documents that were found at the university, the president did not recall. There is nothing more common. You know this. I know this. There is nothing more common with a witness of any age when asked about events that are years old to say, I do not recall. Indeed, they're instructed by their attorney to do that if they have any question about it. You understood that. You made a choice. That was a political choice. It was the wrong choice.
Oh, so good. Adam Schiff yesterday. And now let's listen to the cherry on top. This is Congresswoman Cori Bush, who represents Missouri's 1st congressional district, including the city of St. Louis. I really like her, and this basically speech that she gave yesterday I felt was appropriate and representative of where we're at. And she called the disgraced former president the former white supremacists in chief, which I think I'm going to take and use now. Here is Congresswoman Cori Bush.
The lady from Missouri is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here, Mr. Hur. St. Louis and I are here today once again to focus on the real issues that affect our communities instead of partisan hit jobs. Let me start by saying that the potential mishandling of classified information is a serious issue, and I believe it was appropriate for the Attorney General to appoint both special counsels in the Biden and Trump cases. As my colleagues have pointed out, President Biden fully complied with the investigation conducted by Special Counsel Hur, who did not find evidence sufficient to warrant criminal charges. Despite this outcome, Republicans have used the special counsel's report to further their longstanding efforts to re-elect the former white supremacist in chief, Donald Trump, who faces 40 criminal charges related to the mishandling of classified documents, including obstruction of justice. While President Biden returned all of the classified material and complied with the special counsel's investigation, let's remind ourselves what Donald Trump has said and done. He refused to turn over the classified documents in his possession to the National Archives. He is on tape sharing documents he said he could have declassified when he was president. He wrongly claimed in an interview that the Presidential Records Act allows him to do whatever he wants, and he was allowed to do everything he did. He also said on his right-wing social media platform, quote, I'm allowed to do all of this. He continues to admit to his possession of these documents on the campaign trail. So this hearing is not a good faith oversight effort. It is just the latest in a long line of dysfunctional and destructive actions taken by this Republican majority. They don't care about responsible governance or making people's lives better. They don't have an affirmative agenda. They are throwing whatever they can at the wall and hoping it sticks, and they have zero credibility to talk about mental acuity when they support Donald Trump. The same Donald Trump who mixes up Joe Biden and Barack Obama and Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi. The same Donald Trump who incorrectly pronounced the words Venezuela, respected, and United States. The same Donald Trump who calls January 6 defendants hostages. And the same Donald Trump who believed bleach injections would treat COVID-19. It is deeply hypocritical for anyone who champions this man for the presidency to talk about the mental acuity of anyone else. But this is nothing new. This has been a consistent pattern of the Republican majority in this Congress. From the sham impeachment investigation that has completely collapsed to the absurd impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas, Republicans have solely focused on destroying the incumbent president, destroying the Democratic Party, destroying progressive movements for social justice, all so that they can re-elect one of the worst presidents of all time. Now, it is well known that I have disagreements with President Biden on certain issues. My concerns are rooted in the desire to resolve policy matters and help him take better positions that save more lives. That's not what Republicans are doing. That's not what these investigations and attacks are about. They are trying everything they can to turn back the clock on our rights and our freedoms, and we cannot take the bait. Let's focus on policy. Let's focus on substance. Let's focus on saving and improving the lives of our constituents. not misusing the precious time and resources of this committee, not being dishonest just because it serves our political interests. We are better than that, and our country deserves better than all of this. I will continue to reject these absurd distractions from the investments we need in the communities that we represent. Let's focus on that instead of this irresponsible and easily repudiated Republican clown show. Thank you, and I yield back.
Oh, man. Oh, so good. Cori Bush. Real good stuff. Jamie Raskin, Adam Schiff, Cori Bush, and that is the audio that I've got for you. Obviously, a lot of other things happened yesterday, but that is what I wanted to share with you in the time I allotted, and I'm already over. I usually try to do about 20 minutes in the news segment, but I'm already up to 25 minutes, and I want to get to my conversation with Linette Lopez, who I've been trying to get on the show for a while. She's a senior correspondent at Business Insider, which increasingly has been doing very good work in a very crowded media landscape. They get some great scoops and have some awesome reporters. She focuses mainly on tech, finance, and economics, as well as international relations. She conducts investigations into controversial companies like Tesla, which she's investigated since 2018. She's a graduate of the most prestigious journalism school in the country, Columbia University School of Journalism. She's won a whole bunch of awards, including Rising Star for Top Women in Media Award. In 2020, she won the Excellence in Financial Journalism Award. In 2023, she won the New York Press Club Award for commentary on digital journalism on a series of stories about the stock market's decline in 2022. She's a real smart journalist who contributes to NPR's Marketplace, and you've seen her on MSNBC and CNN, and now right here on Stand Up with Pete Dominick. Real excited to get her on the show. We had a great conversation about Boeing, Tesla, and more. I hope you like it. I hope you appreciate it. I hope you go tell Linette Lopez that you enjoyed having her on, because having her, adding her voice to the mix on these issues, I think is real important, and you should definitely read her stuff, which I have been so enlightened by. I've learned a lot from her reporting, her opinions on things, and I just love talking to her. She's a great talker. I think you're going to love it. Let's do it right now for the first time on Stand Up with Linette Lopez.
I hate to bring this up, but I remember early in the Clinton campaign against Trump, everybody was like, well, the one nice thing about Trump was his kids. And now, remember, Hillary was like, he raised some lovely children. Remember in that debate where they were like, oh, say one nice thing about Donald Trump?
I vaguely remember that. I think I blotted out, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Why did we even give him that then?
I don't think I did.
Really?
I don't think I did. I had been paying attention to that family for so long. I had read enough and knew enough that I never thought that guy even knew his kids, saw his kids, or had any concern about his family.
Well,
but that's all.
I sleep better at night knowing that Uday and Qusay can't do business in the state of New York anymore, where I live.
Oh, that's hilarious. I just read Steve Cole's new book about Iraq and all about Uday and Qusay, and the parallels are hilariously, well, coincidental? No. So let's talk a little bit about you've done some amazing reporting on Tesla, on Boeing recently, and of course, always on China. And, you mentioned Trump and Elon, and I kind of just want to ask you about their relationships, if you want to just focus on Elon, with China, because I'm super confused. He needs China to sell his cars there, but China has their own electric car company, BYD, which you've written on and reported on, and you've reported on the wider industry. But maybe we could just start in on this by talking about his relationship with China and how much has changed since you've been reporting on it alone.
Well, I started covering Tesla back in 2018 during the Model 3 build-out, which was, as Elon described it, production hell, then delivery hell. And it was at that point in the business where Elon himself has said it almost went bankrupt. He did the whole, I'm going to take it private for $420 a share thing. It was a disaster for them. And the thing that saved the company was building the plant in Shanghai, which the Chinese Communist Party rolled out the red carpet for Elon. Everything. I was stunned by how quickly the factory was built, the permitting, everything. It was clearly party had blessed this. And the factory was done in record time. It was done by the end of 2019. And in 2020, Tesla had its first year of profitability, which it was just a sign of how much of a difference China was making and was going to make. Now, of course, China can take that factory back anytime they want. It sits on Chinese land, and the CCP can take it back for environmental reasons, labor reasons, whatever. It's essentially, it's Tesla's, but is it really Tesla's? I argue that we're about to learn that lesson, and this is something that I've been writing about for years too. American companies are about to learn the lesson of what happens when China closes, which is something that we've seen before in world history, but because Americans in their mind think of China as something that started in the 1970s,
right,
they forget that we've had these cycles of opening up and closing and opening up and closing since like the 1700s.
Explain what you're predicting here about closing and what you're seeing in the near future.
We're seeing the closure of public life, and we're seeing a wringing out of the foreigners from Chinese business. If you're not paying close attention, maybe you don't know that there have been raids on consulting offices and accounting offices for Western firms in China. It has become very difficult to do business there. And the kind of transparency that people even expected 15 years ago in terms of data about consumption, regular things, that economic data that we would take for granted here in the United States are harder and harder to come by, honestly. So this has created a dynamic in which foreign firms have gotten the hint that they're not welcome. And if you're looking at Apple sales and you're looking at Tesla sales, you're seeing these domestic competitors gain share. That's not an accident. The CCP has made it quite clear that it's able to pull the levers of the economy in order, in terms of, stopping or getting people to stop buying Japanese products or
right,
South Korean products when there's been some kind of diplomatic dispute. So,
they can control their markets overnight.
Yeah. Well, they've got a really scrappy internet presence. The firewall, the conversation going on in China and on the Chinese internet is very regulated and very intentional. So that helps, and it creates a completely different world.
You create the conversation, you create the narrative, which is something you can try to do. Certainly people like Donald Trump have tried to do it in America, but there's too much speech, one might argue, in the United States of America. By the way, by demonstrating this too much speech, I looked you up on YouTube, and there are people that have made like hour-long videos just criticizing your reporting on Tesla.
I know. You losers.
Well, my question, what is that about? What is that loyalty to? What is the loyalty to the company or to the man, to the point where if a journalist writes about them in any way critical, they're so dedicated to that company and that maybe that person. How do you see people like that? Because there are these Tesla sycophants. What do you call them? I don't know that.
I just, he's not your dad, guys. He wouldn't play with you. He wouldn't, he's not your dad.
All right, I'll stop asking you to be a psychoanalyst and go back to your reporting, because there's this one passage in your piece that I wanted to refer to, China's EV takeover, that I thought was so powerful, and I just want to read it. You write, "We are witnessing a shock to the global automotive order unseen since Japan barreled into the market in the 1970s. China's EV ascendance has sparked a fight that is forcing companies to stretch the limits of their technological capability and policymakers to reimagine the ideological underpinnings of decades of trade strategy. What's at stake is nothing less than a U.S. industry worth $104 billion, as much as Angola's national GDP and all the 3 million jobs that come with it." You're talking about the United States automobile industry, which is depends how people want to say it, the backbone of our economy, like a few other industries. And what is changing? Help me flesh that out a little bit. Say more about that in your reporting, what you're seeing.
Well, this has been something it's been coming for years.
Right.
And the big three, they're used to selling America big gas guzzlers, luxury cars, very comfortable. And I don't think people were paying attention to the fact that Chinese EVs were getting very cool, very affordable, and that they were software forward and had all these cool gadgets and features that we weren't really into here in the United States. So I really was dragged into this because, you can't report about Elon unless you report about his Chinese competition,
right,
and look at that market and look at what really China is doing for Tesla as a company. And once you start looking at that wider market, you see all these competitors with all these shiny new cars. And I realized it was only a matter of time before these presented themselves to the American people as options for those who want EVs. And our EVs here still are like $10,000 more expensive than a comparable combustible engine vehicle. So the question is, how do we create the supply chain that builds cars cheap enough to compete with these Chinese counterparts that are also cool? I think that there is a cool factor here that we need
for sure. But isn't, you mentioned in your article, the main cost driving that is labor. In America, you can make really good money if you're a UAW member, especially now. Their newly negotiated contract is universally pretty lauded, but that's not, you don't get paid the same to make cars in China on their assembly line, it would seem.
No, not at all. But it also has to do with the fact that China made this a priority 15 years ago, and the government did what it could to marshal the resources and the commodities that were necessary to create an ecosystem that was friendly to building these cars.
Yeah, say something about the raw materials that go into EVs and the way that China has and the U.S., for example, are both competing for them, and what the difference is. Anything you want about that, the raw materials?
Well, the main issue is the batteries, lithium and all these materials that the technology is moving so fast here that it's hard to. The exciting thing about energy at this moment is that everybody's experimenting with different things. But batteries, as we know them now, are minerals that we haven't necessarily focused on here in the United States. We don't have very many lithium plants or anything like that. I think we have 5 here. So the Chinese made sure that they had control of those plants and those resources, mostly in Africa, and could make sure that they got what they needed, and we kind of slept on it. Joe Biden passed the Inflation Reduction Act and the other one, I think I mentioned in the story. Doesn't matter. We're working on it. If you can throw money at the problem, we're doing that.
Right. Building battery plants and
Building battery plants and stuff, but we're late.
Right.
We're late.
How does China, you write, to dominate the global market, Chinese automakers have to find ways to slip around various barriers Western nations have put up. To crack Europe, BYD, that's the Chinese car manufacturer. Build your dream. That's what it stands for. Is that what it stands for?
Yeah.
BYD has announced plans to build a factory in Hungary. Cracking the U.S. is more complex. It has more trade barrier protection from China Automobile Industry Incorporated onslaught, but it may not work forever. That seems to be the key. The automakers in America own the policymakers, of course. They're not going to let Chinese cars be sold here, right? They're not like Japanese cars or German cars. We have different relationships with those countries and those countries with us.
Well, there is a national security component to this, considering all the cool software that we're putting in our cars that monitor everything that we do. That's something that people who are concerned about the trade relationship and this car situation do bring up as a challenge. And it's really hard to argue with the China hawks in Washington these days. But anyway, yeah, we have trade barriers around this stuff. Donald Trump threw up trade barriers. We have it was NAFTA. Trump called it something else just for fun. But we have those barriers that would essentially make just a plain old Chinese EV that you bought here in the United States, it would have a 27.5% tariff on it. Now, the way to start building the infrastructure that would get a cheaper Chinese EV here in the United States, that the Chinese would have to start building parts plants and a parts infrastructure in Mexico, because there are country of origin, complicated percentages involved with counting whether a car is made in Mexico or the United States. This is all for the trade geeks. And if you want to talk to them, be my guest, but you should just let me do it for you because this stuff is not always interesting.
Yes, and you do. And you do a great job interpreting it all as well. I could talk to you more. I want to talk to you more about the automobile industry and Tesla and Elon Musk and everything, but I got to talk to you about your reporting on Boeing. Recent piece at Business Insider titled "Boeing is a Wake-Up Call. America's businesses gambled that greed is good. Now they're losing that bet big time." Linette, this is one of the most well-reported, well-written research stories I've read in business and finance and economics in a long time. It really made me a huge fan of your reporting, not that I wasn't already, but I have to talk to you about that. But first and foremost, when you fly now, do you look up to see if the airline you're flying on is flying a Boeing airplane? Are you worried about flying? Like these planes, yes, they had these planes crash a few years back, which did tremendous damage to their reputation, and you could talk about that. But like in America and the regulations, and I know they've had some problems, but I'm still flying. I still feel like I can fly Boeing. Should I be worried?
I mean, I talked to some people and read some things that made me a little worried.
Right.
That made me a little worried. And I'm sure most of the planes are fine, but that's not something you want to say about planes. Right. I'm sure most of the planes are fine.
Right.
That's not something you want to say about planes. I think we need to take this seriously. And, maybe you should think a little bit before you fly a Boeing plane. And that should make you mad. It should make you mad that we created an ideology for corporations in this country that allows them to rationalize efficiency over safety and quality. I think we should be upset that we have regulators in this country who have way too cozy relationships with some of the most important companies in the country. And on the one hand, yes, we want the government to have a good relationship with Boeing, but not too good. Right. I want the government to have a good relationship with JP Morgan, but not too good. No, there needs to still be the ability to scare these companies a little bit when they've gone off course. And I think it's very clear that Boeing has structural problems that flow from an ideology that puts shareholders and getting things done fast before the wider community of stakeholders in a corporation, which includes employees and the community that they serve and work in, and the taxpayers who help pay for their research and development, and everybody, and the customers. Oh yeah, customers. How about this?
Very, very well said. You used Boeing, and we could talk about a lot of other companies, but in this article to explain the economic philosophy that has dominated so many major American companies, and we could argue this is spread throughout the world to some extent, to an insidious long-term effect, that's for sure. There's a whole bunch of people getting rich in the short term as well, but then often their company collapses or something terrible happens. You write in this piece, there was a time when pilots had stickers on their bags that said, "If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going." Founded in 1916, the manufacturer helped the U.S. launch NASA and win World War II. For decades, it was the pinnacle of American engineering. Boeing was America's crown jewel. William McGee, a journalist advocate in the aviation industry, old hand told me it was one of the most important and impressive companies in the U.S. Linette, what happened?
Well,
Milton Friedman.
Yeah, Milton Friedman happened, and the Boeing merged with another company, another aerospace company that had really espoused the ideals of shareholder value first, of efficiency, and Boeing lost that engineering forward culture. And over the years, it could no longer coast on its successes and the investments that it made. And that's starting to show. You really need to invest in this technology to make it cutting edge and to make it safe. And I think what we're seeing right now as the incidents of Boeing planes completely screwing up. I mean, there's Lion Air and all those crashes in 2018, but there was also an incident in 2013. So I think that we're starting to see that the things coming apart a little bit.
Literally.
Literally coming apart. And the things that Boeing did, I mean, it revolutionized air travel and the double seat airplanes and all these cool things that we now take for granted as a part of air travel. That was Boeing, but if you don't invest in that kind of engineering talent and in that technical perfection, then you're not going to have the same advancements. And also one thing that people like to point out is that Boeing moved its headquarters away from its factories to a more place where all the corporate guys can hang out in Chicago and also outside Virginia to be by the lobbyists and to be by Washington. So
because that matters. That matters as much as anything else, the Washington rules. And you're right, an entire generation of politicians and executives preached the doctrine of efficiency in the name of maximizing profits for shareholders. And now we've seen the results. Stagnant wages, massive inequality, legislators captured by industry lobbyists, and companies that coast on past innovation and financialization because it's easier than investing in something new, investing in the company, investing in the product. Has gone by the wayside to hand money out to executives and shareholders because quarterly capitalism is the world that we seem to live in with any publicly traded company. That's the only thing that matters, the next quarter, not the next.
The thing is that CEOs get paid mostly in stock, which is something that was not allowed until 1978. So there's a real incentive structure there to keep stock prices up. I understand the guys on Wall Street are very charming. The Boy Scouts at Morgan Stanley and the altar servers at Goldman Sachs are irresistible. But you would think that a company might be okay with a sort of meh stock price for what, I mean, Jeff Bezos at Amazon was okay with it while he was building the infrastructure of Amazon. So it's really a decision. It's a management decision, and CEOs have been taught that stock price is everything, and their paycheck confirms it.
That's for sure. And you write about it really well here in this reporting. But I will say in 2019, you reminded me the Business Roundtable, an advocacy group formed in the 70s for corporations. They read, as you write, the populist tea leaves, and they published a statement that said the purpose of corporation was to serve all stakeholders, customers, employees, suppliers, communities, and shareholders. So they put that statement out. Aren't things better now that they put the statement out? Aren't they doing that now?
You know what? No. Oh. And I think they really thought Liz Warren might be president. Like, they were scared. And they were, it was 2020. It was 2019. We were all on edge. But no, I can't think of, people talk about DEI. Is that an example of corporations, diversity, equity, inclusion, and all this ESG, environmental, social good? They're like, isn't this an example of corporations, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not an example. No, that is a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. This is talking about rejiggering the way that we think corporations, the way corporations think about running themselves and what their purpose is. It's not just, we need to give these people a leg up, or we need to do this because it's en vogue, or it's good. No. The corporation itself needs to understand that it exists as a stakeholder in several communities, not just shareholders, and that those communities and what is good for them is also good for the corporation. Not something that the corporation needs to think about, or, a nice program that we're doing. No, we're doing this because this is a function of how corporations operate, because they take into consideration everyone that is affected by their product and the business that they do. So, no, I do not consider either of those things. We need to retrain all the boys who go to business school, and girls. There are girls there too. Well, then
I feel like when you say retrain, I feel like it would be about incentives. What a company's role and purpose is. But you're talking about changing the culture of capitalism, and I'm not sure that you can do that given the fact that things are only becoming potentially less regulated.
Sure, you can.
Go ahead.
We did all this. We can do all of it. Undo all of it. Like I said, the rule in 1978 that allowed stock buybacks for corporations, that wasn't something.
Well, right now we don't even have a law that says Congress people can't buy stocks. I mean, maybe start there because
I worry less about that than I do about large scale, than I do about plane doors flying off. But yes, that is crap. That is nonsense. They should not be able. But honestly, too, I look at Congress and I'm like, if these guys are trading stocks, man, then some of my sources are making money off of them because they don't know what they're talking about.
Right. Man, I could talk to you forever. I just wanted to bring you in today and hopefully, it would go well. I think I love talking. I don't know if you enjoyed it, but I'm sure listeners will, because I'd love to keep talking about your report. And I think it is top notch and really important. Do you think you can do this type of reporting and work independently the way so many of us have? I was at CNN and SiriusXM. I was indemnified. I had their backing and legal. You are at Business Insider, and you are investigating and doing reporting on the most powerful people in the world and the richest companies in the world. Do you think that people, don't you have to have the backing of a company like yours to do this type of reporting? Because it seems pretty scary what you're doing.
I don't think of it as scary. But I do also have an office of lawyers that help me when I know that something might be a little touchy.
Right.
And I went to J school. I had to take the legal class there. So, you kind of get a sense of what your rights are. I don't recommend this kind of reporting for the faint of heart, but if an independent journalist has a lot of money and a good lawyer, then sure, but that's very rare. When I have a lot of mentors in journalism who are older that came to this before the digital world and before very democratic communication systems that kind of put everybody on the same level.
Right.
And billionaires didn't react to reporting back then the way that they do now.
Right. You didn't even know who was running a company a lot of times.
They don't like get on Twitter and cry about like how we insulted their manhood, family, business, pizza, what have you. They don't do that. Or they didn't do that. I would like to bring back a time when CEOs thought they were too good to talk to me.
Well, I think that cow is out of the barn. That toothpaste is out of the... It's
really like, oh my God. Yeah. Just talk to me through my lawyers and that's it.
And it's not just Elon Musk. There are so many others for sure that you've reported on. And, well, I'll let you go. I really appreciate you talking to me, and I hope you keep up the good work and hope everybody subscribes to Business Insider to support your work there. Thank you so much, Linette, for joining me today. Really great.
I was glad to come visit.
How about it? Linette Lopez. There you go. For those of you that complain about Red Holtz and his arrogance, which I love and love to pick on him for. There you go. That is Linette Lopez. Also, by the way, of Bloomberg, but she is a great reporter who I loved talking to, and hopefully you appreciated that and learned as much as I did from our conversation and reading her articles at Business Insider, which you should go support. Follow her on social media. Let her know that you heard her here. She's a first-timer, so it makes a big difference when people let her know that they heard her here on the show. So please go do that right now. All the links to contact her are in today's show notes, as well as everything else you need to support me, the program, and each other in this community. That's all I've got for you on today's show. I really appreciate you listening, and hopefully you'll come back tomorrow and tell all your friends. Write a review on Spotify and iTunes, Apple Podcasts. Subscribe on YouTube and TikTok and Threads and all of the rest of the platforms to spread the word about our amazing community and this program, which is here for you 6 days a week. And that's all I've got. John Carroll writes the music for this show. If you haven't bought this song right now, go to johncarroll.org, 2 R's, 2 L's, and buy it for like $3.99. Go buy this song to thank John for singing it. He sings it live each and every day. I just call him up and go, John, go. All right, now I'm being ridiculous. Bye-bye. Love you, bumblebees.
Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand